Why do we as players and game masters of D&D and other TTRPGs think that we need to put so much effort into describing our scenes? Can't I just say, I hit it with my sword? Isn't you see a dragon, roll for initiative enough? Chances are for you and for me, it's not. But why is it so unsatisfying? And what can we do to create memorable, evocative moments and scenarios that everyone around the table will remember forever? These tips are aimed with game masters and dungeon masters in mind, as they've got the most weight on their shoulders. But players, this advice will stand you in good stead as well when the spotlight is on you, to steal the scene in a positive way, building on the GM's descriptions to create memorable moments. I'm also going to share some techniques on how to practice them and really hone your descriptive skills. My name's Rich, this is Renegade Rolls. We're looking at describing scenes and moments in D&D and other TTRPGs, not the grand world building, but how we present those individual elements to the people around our tables. The way your fighter character strains every sinew to hold back the demon horde, how your ranger keeps perfectly still, a monument to calm precision, before loosing an arrow into the fray. From the GM side, how that demonic horde gnashes and snarls, clawing at the fighter. How the arrows pick them off one by one with deadly accuracy. But also, the idyllic village, the storm-racked cliffs, the oddly cozy inside of a Tarrasque, the band of goblins sneaking up on the character's camp to steal back Boblin, who the characters had previously tricked into going on an adventure with them. There are two reasons why you see a dragon, roll initiative, feels so lame. The first is that we probably have an awesome vision in our head of what this dragon looks like and how it tears the sky asunder with its roar. So naturally, we want to share with our players and make sure that we have this shared concept of the scenarios that the characters find themselves in. Without description, we're left with just the mechanics of the game, and we might as well be playing chess with more rules at this point. Yes, it might be fulfilling from a tactics and strategy point of view, but no one would be engaging that creative side of their brain. There's also a second, deeper reason, and the reason I think that people are drawn to stories of all sorts is we're looking for emotions and perspectives, things we might not have had before with our own lived experience. A great storyteller evokes feeling in their audience, be it love, fear, joy, hate. As humans, we seem to be primed to enjoy stories as a safe way of exploring lives beyond our own. Uniquely in fantasy and sci-fi, we as GMs have an opportunity to evoke something else, a sense of wonder. It's quite a responsibility, but I also feel it's an honour as well, like a sea captain or a starship captain if you prefer, having people trust me to take them somewhere new. Now on with the tips. These first ones are some quickfire freebies and ones that I'm not going to count towards my list. Tip 0.1. Read everything. While researching this video, I realised I don't actually know any expert storytellers personally to ask them some killer questions, but the work of master storytellers is so easy to access. I'd recommend reading as widely as you can, particularly in genres which are parallel to the games that you're playing. So yes, read fantasy, but also read travel writers on fantastic real-world locations. Players, read about real-world journeys and adventures, and notice some of the language they use to describe themselves and the actions that they take. Tip 0.2, show, don't tell. Let others experience the thing that you're describing from their own perspective. So rather than saying the graveyard was scary, describe some of the scary things in the graveyard and let others come to their own conclusion about whether to be scared or not. Tip 0.3, use all the senses, but be consistent with them. As GMs, if you solely stick to sight as the main way you describe the world, when you suddenly switch to describe the smell of something, everyone's going to figure something's up. Tip 0.4, roleplay and description don't end when combat starts. You can describe the scene, the environment, and what your characters do in any way that you like. It doesn't have to be purely mechanical. Big tip number 1, embrace the odd. As a rule of thumb, the only things you need to describe in full detail are the ones which don't match your players' preconceptions. For everything else, a general overview will be enough, and your players' imaginations will fill in the gaps for you. Part of the reason that descriptions in classic novels were so long is because people hadn't seen anything like it for themselves. Describing a faraway land in every detail was essential when your readers may well have not been outside the county, let alone the country before. This tradition of long, florid descriptions remains in some of the most celebrated storytellers to this day. Looking at you, J.R.R. Tolkien, and you, George R.R.R.R.R. Martin, modern audiences have probably seen footage from all over the world, and already have a strong image in their head when you describe a windswept desert, a verdant rainforest, or the crater-pocked surface of the moon. This also applies to fantasy worlds where our players likely have already seen an image of a giant tree in the centre of a forest, glowing with myriad lights high up in the canopy. Even for this fantastical sounding thing, our players already have an image in their head, so maybe it doesn't need the page-long wall of text to describe. We can then save our effort for the things which are truly unique. The silver and gold light of the twin moons cast their forked shadows among the tangle of roofs and cramped dwellings, and down deeper into the twist of alleys of the oldest part of Atterberg. Every door frame and windowsill has etched markings from ancient and indistinct to freshly cut and sharp. You cast your eye over a jagged, serpent-like symbol. Do any of you know Thieves' Cant? So in this example, the biggest surprise is probably the light of the twin moons. If this was how I was opening session 1 of a campaign, it's much more fun doing something like this than a great big lore dump. I then skipped through a load of general description to get to something pertinent. If my players know the setting is medieval fantasy, they're already making a ton of assumptions. I don't need to say that the houses are all built with wooden beams, and the fact that the streets are paved with badly fitted cobbles doesn't matter yet. At least not until an urchin picks one up and chucks one through a window. The big caveat for this is to make sure you know your players. If you're running a game for kids, or people from other cultures, or those who are maybe not as familiar with nerd culture, it's probably worth taking things back a step and explaining things from the beginning. Big tip number 2, timing. Varying our pacing to match the scene is a great way of reinforcing the vibes that you're aiming for. I know that when I'm excited and in the thick of narrating something, my brain goes faster and faster and I struggle to think of what to say. Next. Modulating the speed of my delivery and even pausing outright for a moment can give me more time for my brain to catch up and get ahead of the situation. Others around the table will hopefully interpret this as being more dramatic, or if it's in character, maybe they're speaking with gravitas. Having said that, there is a time and a place for fast delivery in moments of action and drama. In that case, it's all about little flashes of the immediacy of the scene, a couple of key descriptors to keep everyone orientated, and then on we go again. If you have particularly enthusiastic players, they might interpret a moment of silence as an excuse to interrupt. I've seen groups use lights as well as sticks of talking to help with this, but when GMing with this kind of player, I found it's best to lay down the law, but kindly. Big tip number 3, big to small. Aim to describe the scene in the big pertinent blocks, as well as a few well-chosen details. You can leave a lot of the mid-level to the player's imagination. This ties in nicely with our first tip on embracing the odd, though there's an area where there's disagreement among the expert GMs. This is when to mention enemies. Jim Davis of WebDM recommends describing the enemies first, as they're the most important things in a scene for the players to know about, and if you put yourselves in the shoes of an adventurer, of course that's going to be the first thing to catch your attention. Justin Alexander of the Alexandrian has the opposite take on this. He says that the enemies should be the last thing that you describe, as the instant you mention them, that takes up all of the mental bandwidth of the players. I'd be really curious to know where you sit in this debate. Please do let me know. I prefer to go with Justin on this and finish with describing the enemies. It creates rising action, so you have a really nice transition to combat if you start rolling dice immediately afterwards. Bonus points if you're not rolling for initiative and just getting straight into it. This is something I love about Daggerheart, by the way. Another reason that my vote is Team Alexandrian is that if you have players who are keen note takers, their notes on the area description will have been more focused, and when the characters hopefully win the day and combat ends and they're free to explore the room at their leisure, you won't have to repeat nearly so much of the description once the coast is clear. And I think the same applies to using battle maps. If you can, bring the map in as late as possible. As soon as players see one, their brain goes straight into tactics mode. Big tip number 4, words good. A vivid, varied, vibrant lexicon lets your love of language and latent loquaciousness articulate abundantly, allowing amazement and applause aplenty. This is probably the least essential of the tips. Think of it more as the icing on the cake rather than the core of the cakey goodness. Eloquent vocabulary can be mixed with similes and metaphors and all of your high school language techniques. Some well-placed hyperbole, onomatopoeia or personification can work wonders. A good starting point is to think about colours. The blue sky kind of falls flat compared to the aquamarine expanse overhead, though I'd recommend not stressing too much about these, as long as you're still conveying the meaning that you want to your players. Flowery language can be tough to think up on the fly, especially in the middle of the game, so I've taken to making clouds of evocative words and phrases to describe a scene. Even if you don't want to use them at your table, the act of writing them down can definitely set your brain in gear. For colours specifically, I discovered that colour thesauruses are a thing. Print one of these off and stick it to your, hopefully customised GM screen and you'll be sorted. Big tip number 5, be deliberately vague. Try your best to avoid specific real-world references and analogies, as it can ruin the immersion in your scene. There's every chance the others at your table will fill in the gaps for you, and as players we like feeling smart and figuring out what's going on for ourselves. For a simple example, if I describe a sword wreathed in orange light, crackling with magical power, buzzing in the air, fizzing and spluttering before cleaving its target in two, We all know I'm describing a lightsaber, but leave it to others to think it rather than making it explicit for them. I've made this mistake many times, and it can do a lot of damage to others' sense of immersion. I borrow ideas from other sources all the time. I've even got a character whose entire backstory is just based on a nursery rhyme, but I've learned never to show my working. I'll twist things just enough to make them not obvious to others. If you've got a group that's keen on immersion and narrative roleplay, it could be a good house rule to implement. No real-world references. Similarly, if you have a new enemy that your players haven't fought before, don't say its name. Players go right back into tactics mode as soon as you mention the word goblin, troll, or Tarask. Big tip number 6. End with a question or prompt to action, and then shh. This could be something open-ended like, what do you want to do? Or everyone's favourite, how do you want to do this? Something I've been guilty of in the past as GM is asking a player a question, and then continuing to talk to provide more information to them. You see the blacksmith's brow furrow as she pulls the red-hot sword from the roaring furnace. Would you like to speak with her? You can see the sword is glowing, but not evenly. The right way to do this is to be very sure that all the information you want to impart is out in the world before asking the question. Or, and this is my preferred approach, impart some information and then just shh. And see if your players ask follow-up questions. It might feel a bit scary to leave silence, or maybe you feel like you're under-explaining, but it'll certainly raise the curiosity of your players, and especially online, give a really clear indication of when you're passing the baton to them to begin talking. Remember, you can always give additional details on request. It's a great way of knowing your players are engaged if they're asking questions, and if they ask the right questions, they might uncover secrets too. There is a risk of getting bogged down here in describing the environment, so always try and have some way of moving the action along if the players are stalling. To keep the pace up, ask leading questions such as, would you like to speak to her? Rather than the more open, what would you like to do? Tips done. How do we practice? While getting ready for this video, I realised I got a perfect tool for this. Dixit. You could do something similar with anything you have to hand, as long as you've got interesting images to work with. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the image and then write down how we describe that scene to people around our table. This might just be a sentence or two, or it could be more if you find you've got a lot to say. I've been trying this all week and it's a really good challenge, especially for some of the more abstract cards. If you're looking to take this a step further and hone your improvising skills, give yourself 10 seconds of thinking time, then 20 seconds of description time. Would you like to see me try? Yeah, of course you'd like to see me try. So, random draw, my card is... As your schooner sails in the choppy sea, the spirit of the island looks down upon you. You can see the sunset behind her hair. She looks kindly, she looks at peace. And you know that your voyage is going to be a fortunate one. That's really difficult. If you're feeling brave like me and want to try this too, I'd highly recommend recording yourself. Listening back is going to be a jarring experience. You'll immediately notice all the ahs and ums, all the pauses, and all the words that you overuse. The next step will be to think about those overused words, look for synonyms in the thesaurus, and just get practicing. You'll likely get plenty of opportunities on game night, but the aim is to make this sort of descriptive flow second nature. Like riding a bike, where you don't need to think about the mechanics anymore, and you can concentrate on spinning all those other plates, all those different areas of GMing. I'm aware that's another really mixed metaphor. I need to work on this. Speaking of those other areas of GMing, this video is part of a series where I'm looking to up my game by researching and learning from experts in 12 different areas of GMing. The intro video should be on your screen just now. I'll see you there, or at the table near you, rolling an improbable succession of ones. But in the meantime, I'm going to take my own advice and finish with a question. Would you like to know more?